This has all started because we were talking about AMP, as we have many times on this show. Jonathan heard the show. We said, Leo, you got some things wrong. We went back and forth a little bit. And then Jeff said, well, we got to get Jonathan on the show to talk about it. Jonathan's interest is because Nuzzle, and as we mentioned when we were talking about AMP, is one of the first places you could see Google's accelerated, what does the M stand for? Pages. Accelerated mobile pages in the real world. And in fact, AMP is about to launch for real in February, but somehow Jonathan has an inside track.
Because it's an open, right, Jonathan? It's just an open standard, so you just started using it, right? You found content that fits and you implemented.
Well, you know, once Facebook announced instant articles, we thought having news stories load really quickly on mobile phones instead of being awful and slow sounds great.
Yep.
But it shouldn't just be fast in Facebook. It should be fast in Nuzzle, LinkedIn, Twitter, Gmail, Pocket. It should be, you know, that sounds great, but that should work in everything. So the idea that publishers should publish into proprietary Nuzzle CMS, not really realistic, since we're not a giant company yet like Apple or Facebook. But even if we were, Nuzzle supports the long tail. We have users all over the world. So even though we haven't translated our app outside of English, we have people who use it in all these countries. They're seeing content from other countries. I mean, we're not, you know, Nuzzle would not work if it only worked with like the top 10 newspapers and like that. So Nuzzle supports a long tail of content. Whatever the people that you follow are sharing, that's what is being shown to you. So it really has to be an open web approach. So we came up with an idea of something analogous to Facebook instant articles, but based on HTML and HTTP, where there'd be a meta tag and would point to an alternate version that you just load via HTTP, and any compliant client could just discover it.
Oh, so you were you were ready for this. You were champing at the bit for this.
So yeah, so we had an idea that because of you know the way Nuzzle really is in some ways open itself, it had to be something very similar to AMP. Then we heard from some people about AMP, and we said, well, that's pretty much exactly what we had been imagining ourselves. Nuzzle, of course, not nearly has the resources of Google. So the fact that Google was already working with all these publishers on something that was pretty much what, you know, we had thought we needed was a great, happy coincidence. So then we got involved in the AMP project prior to the, I guess, the unveiling of it. And we said, you know, we're sort of a pretty nimble, you know, technical startup team. We can just have our Android and iPhone app supporting this the minute that the project is unveiled. And we did that because some of the newspapers that were early partners on the publishing side were already publishing AMP pages. And we started coding it up, and it worked. So as of the day, I forget when that was. It was a few months ago. Was it September? I can't remember exactly when it was. But as of the day,
October, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So the AMP project was unveiled by Google, and there were 5 or 6 tech partners, and it was like Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, WordPress, huge multi-billion-dollar companies, and Nuzzle. And we were the only ones, you know, the only teeny little startup included that early, but we were also, I think, the only ones that actually, as of that moment, were displaying AMP content live in our app. So we've already had it actually working since the day the project was unveiled, and we've been super excited to be part of it. And we're still in further talks with Google about how to use more of Google's technologies that are related to AMP.
So we
like what, Jonathan?
Go ahead.
So I think the next stage is using Google's cache.
Yes, right. Which they've offered, and basically they become your CDN for free if you use AMP content, right?
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
I mean, I told the story on the show here when I came back from the Google Newsgeist in Helsinki, where instant articles had just been announced, and I was among those who said loudly, Google, you should do an open source version of this, and I wrote about it. Jonathan contacted me immediately and said, we're working on something like that.
Neat.
Let's get people together. And I didn't think Google was going to do it at first, and by God, they turned around and they did it in I think 9 months, which even though Google has tons of resources for a big, huge company, that was fast. And then Jonathan was that, as he said, that day, it's how I can demonstrate AMP to people around the world is to show them Nuzzle.
Yeah, so we were thrilled to be part of it, and it's only, I think, going to get even better as some of the additional technologies come online.
So did you work at all with Google on what AMP ended up being? Did they consult?
I think most of the consultation so far was with publishers, because the publishers were the ones that really had to make a lot of changes on their end to how they're doing things, and then figure out ways to make sure that all of their needs for tracking and analytics and revenue and all those kind of things were being supported. So I think that's logically been the big focus of it. In terms of the client side, that's lagging behind. Google themselves is, I think, going to start integrating this in, I think it's February, and I think Pinterest and Twitter and LinkedIn, still are it's coming up. So we were pretty quick on that side, but for the most part, there wasn't really a lot of changes that we needed, to be honest. Google has now given us details about the caching API and asked for our feedback about that, and that's something we're looking at right now.
The publishers are worried, but some of them were worried about paywalls and how to handle that. The day after the last show, last Thursday, there was a meeting of the founding publishers and Google, the Digital News Initiative, where this really kind of launched a year ago at Davos. And so this was a progress report of where we are, and it's really moved well, and everybody's pretty excited about where this is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll bring up, well, first of all, let me demonstrate it. So just so we can see the value of it. So this is Nuzzle on Android, which, by the way, is you did it on iOS first, you did it on Android. It's just great. I usually do it on the web because I'm sitting down at breakfast going through news stories before our day begins. But if I ever have to read news on my mobile, it's a really great way to do it. Now, I won't see it on the web, right? I won't see AMP on the web. I'll only see it on my mobile. Is that right?
And certainly Nuzzle, we're only showing it in our Android and iPhone apps.
It only makes sense. Well, it doesn't only make sense, but it makes most sense in a mobile environment. Yeah. But typically on a desktop, you're connected to a fast internet connection. You're not going to see the difference. In fact, you won't either.
Google is going to show AMP content only on mobile.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily within an app. I think if you go to Google search within a browser on mobile, I think they're going to show it.
That's right.
So what Nuzzle does with AMP content in mobile browsers, that's an open issue.
So which
but
publisher?
Most of our mobile users are probably using our Android or iPhone app.
Which publisher should I open? How many of these are amped? The Times is amped, right?
I think so, yeah. They should be. It should flash a lightning bolt.
Let's see if it flashes a lightning bolt. It didn't.
Try The Guardian, try Washington Post.
The Guardian or the Post. Let's see if I can find one of those in my my feed here. Let's do another Times article. Yeah. Did you saw that?
There you go.
Okay, and so
sign in.
Paywall. But that's an interesting thing. AMP actually worked hard to make sure paywalls were honored, even through a cache, I guess, right?
Well, we're currently not using the Google Cache yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're supporting the paywall then
But, AMP making the mobile content load quick and paywalls are really orthogonal issues.
I see. Okay. The paywall's just going to work. I'll log into my Times account in a second. I don't know why it's not logged in here. I'm trying to find something that is amped.
Because they log you out with some regularity.
They seem to, don't they?
Peeves me.
Yeah. I seem to log. Well, I can log in pretty quick. Let me try it again. You know what? They didn't require a login for the public editors post. So I'm thinking they want the public to see that. And that was also not amped.
I think blogs. There's no login for blogs.
That's what it is. Okay. And they didn't amp blogs, apparently. Yeah. So you get a lightning bolt that loads faster. I'm not one of those people who notices a big difference because I'm usually on a fast connection. And the sites I'm going to are not the junked up sites that have lots of crappy ads, but those are probably not amped anyway.
Well, people have definitely noticed the difference. I mean, we've had people tweet like, "Oh my God, it's so much faster." Yeah. And the funny thing is, we're not yet doing the caching or prefetch, which would be probably enabled by using the caching. So even with just avoiding loading hundreds of megabytes of multiple redundant JavaScript libraries, just that part alone, people absolutely have noticed the speed difference and tweeted about it.